Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers drop a big game Monday to the Knicks, and LeBron is feeling a hangover from the in-season tournament. We'll explain next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, it's always going to be free and never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. So we can go hang out with 22,000 concerned subscribers as the Lakers drop to 15 and 12 on the season, 114 to 109. The final score. Spike Lee leaves the crypt a happy man on Monday night. Lot to get into with this one. It wasn't like the San Antonio games. The Lakers turned around. They played a little bit better, but it is still a disjointed group and one that is not winning a lot of games. Just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. There have been moments, Andy, throughout this season, and certainly last year it happened, where it's not that everybody's playing poorly at the same time or certain things jump out as really bad, but like the parts are moving in different places, and where they all lined up together in those in-season tournament games, in all the other ones, they just haven't yet. They're a little out of focus, a little pixelated almost. It's not terrible, but it's not right either.
No, they've looked really disjointed ever since winning the IST. The banner was raised up today. For what it's worth, I think whether you like the idea of the banner going up, whether you hate the idea of the banner going up, objectively speaking, the banner itself, I think, looked pretty cool. Like, it was a good-looking banner, regardless of whether or not you wanted it raised. And certainly the Lakers did not play in a way that made it feel worthy of being raised.
No.
But it's interesting. They've looked disjointed since winning that tournament. And to some degree, they're going through a mini version of how the season began, with guys in and out of the lineup because they were without AD for one of these games. They were without LeBron, D'Angelo Russell, or they were without LeBron one game, without Anthony Davis, D'Lo, and Cam Reddish for another. Jared Vanderbilt's been in and out, and he's either still on a pitch count of sorts, and it looked like he irritated that heel during this game, or maybe this is the amount of minutes he's playing. It's hard.
We'll talk. I think we'll maybe get into this tomorrow, but there is, I think, something to the latter about there being kind of a cap on the amount of minutes he's going to play, particularly if Reddish is going to get a lot of minutes too.
Right. And, with guys coming back, Christie's been, in and out of the lineup. Like, in certain respects, the Lakers, I think, are encountering a version of what was getting them off to a really choppy and sub 500 start. And they are sub 500 since this tournament. It also doesn't help. LeBron spoke after the game about how they are feeling something, like in terms of just having played a lot. They were playing a lot of games anyway, on top of the extra game and the travel that went into this tournament. And, they need to try to find an opportunity to get some rest and get themselves really back feeling in a way that they were at their peak. Nobody seems right now more spent, frankly, than LeBron.
I would agree.
And if you look at his numbers since the tournament, he's below 50% from the field. He's below 32% from behind the arc, still dishing at a good rate, but he has not looked great. I thought he was very up and down in this game, and nobody controls this offense more than LeBron. So in certain respects, if LeBron is in and out, the team likely is going to be as well. I'm not putting it all on LeBron.
No.
There is a connection.
Sure. I think The difference is, to me, like LeBron, they are still at a place where a dominant LeBron is part of the formula.
Mm-hmm.
And LeBron, there's a big difference between LeBron shooting 54, 55, 56%. Shot 56%, almost 57% in November. He's at 50% in December, but that's front loaded and really boosted by a 9 for 12 against New Orleans in the tournament. So, I think to some degree, some of the downturn in efficiency happened before, or early, certainly before the final against Indiana. But just the entire month of December, he has really struggled with his efficiency. And, he was at 52% from the floor against Dallas, but missed one of the San Antonio games, was at 41% at the other one, and 43.5 Monday night against the Knicks. And so the Lakers offense isn't in a place right now because D'Angelo Russell has cooled off offensively. I don't think he was bad on Monday so much as he wasn't a factor. Like he was like you needed more.
I thought he was pretty bad in this game.
I just didn't see him. I mean, I didn't feel him there a whole lot. Like,
that's part of not playing well.
Well, but you understand what I'm getting. But like sometimes guys are there and they're like actively playing bad. They're turning the ball over. They're doing. It was just one of these games where D'Lo, compared to early in the season, for example, where you had these really assertive games. On a person, with his personal scoring, and then also with with distributing the ball. But anyway, back to LeBron.
He was not dynamic. I mean,
I think that is a good way of putting it. He was not. I don't think he was bad, but he was definitely not dynamic. But we'll get to the other guys in a second. We'll stay with LeBron. On the one hand, it's hard to argue with 25, 11, and 11, which is what he did against the Knicks. 23, 7, and 14 against San Antonio. And the turnovers, he had 2 on Monday. He had 2 against San Antonio on Friday. But when he's below 50%, it has, especially, 2 of 8 from 3, 2 of 6 from 3 the other night. It does have a really negative impact on the offense. And if other guys aren't going to pick that up, you don't get, a huge night from Reeves, who was good, but it wasn't his most efficient night either. Or D'Lo doesn't step up, or, they were, Taurean Prince and Cam Reddish were combined 5 of 22 in this game, which is both too many shots and too many misses. Like somebody else is going to have to pick it up, and they don't have that right now. I would disagree. I would disagree to some point. I think they do have it in Anthony Davis, who has been terrific. But it can't just be. And it's got to be. This is with the assumption that AD is doing what AD is doing. AD
but it needs to be pointed out that he hasn't.
Okay. If people didn't see it, you're right. We never actually put out the numbers. 32 and 14 for AD, 14 and 22 from the floor. He was great. But somewhere else in that supporting cast, if Davis is going to be good, and I think Reeves has generally been good, over the last month or so, I think he's straightened out his game.
Well, especially if since the IST ended, Reeves and Davis have been the 2 guys who I think have consistently played well. Even if Reeves was not perfectly efficient from the field, he did a really good job in this game setting up other guys.
He's good. He had a good game, and he's played well.
Yes.
So but when the Lakers have had success, though, Andy, it's because they've been able to get those games from, whether it's Rui or maybe it's D'Lo or wherever it's, but there hasn't been something to pick up the slack from a less than heroic performance from LeBron. So You pointed out, as we were setting up, kind of thinking what we are going to talk about, 13 shots, a lot of shots from Taurean Prince. 9 shots is a lot of shots from Cam Reddish. What's out of balance here that is creating those situations where maybe the wrong guys are taking shots? It's a question I want to ask next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by eBay Motors, and our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we are going to provide you players guaranteed to fit your roster. So let's check out who Josh has picked out for us this week on eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Tari Eason from the Houston Rockets, still coming off the bench, but Ime Udoka has been finding extra minutes for him. He has a strong fantasy value per minute option who becomes useful for everybody as, again, it seems like those minutes are creeping up. And then, did not see this coming, James Wiseman. Isaiah Stewart for the Pistons has been hurt. Wiseman has produced in his last couple games. Confidence in him, I think, probably fan-wide and probably inside their own building.
I wouldn't buy and hold there. I might burn through that.
I'll tell you right now, if Josh manages to nail this one, he is the best in the fantasy biz, period. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy basketball championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. There is nothing worse than having your vehicle break down in real time. There's nothing worse than getting the call from the friend or the loved one that their car has broken down in real time. There's nothing worse, by the way, than having the car that you're in break down on the middle of the freeway heading to Las Vegas because you're going to a bachelor party and all of the bachelor party gear is in this particular car, hypothetically speaking. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. I can't tell the story of that bachelor party. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. I wish it existed at that time. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, getting towed all the way from like halfway between Las Vegas and LA to Vegas, very expensive.
Zizek's Road.
Yes, it was around Zizek's Road. You are correct. Guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at those prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
It's interesting, that car. That's the same one that eventually caught on fire.
No. We didn't take my car. We took.
Right, that was different. Yeah,
I don't want to say his name. You never know.
Some mitigating circumstances about leaving that car on the side of the road too.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
I don't want to say the car was ours.
No, a bunch of people jumping out of it.
We wanted to say we found the car.
Ownership of that one. Right.
We found this car. We'd like to supervise it being towed to Vegas, but just to make it clear, officer, this is not our car.
Not my car.
No.
I don't know anything that's in it. Anything you find in it, not mine.
Trying to be a good Samaritan. I happened to be inside it when it broke down, but it's not my car.
This just trying to help. This was one of the games too. The Knicks are not a bad team. Obviously, they get up for playing the Lakers, and Julius Randle's been on a bit of a bender. Lately played very well. Jalen Brunson's played all-star caliber ball all season long.
Julius Randle's coming off an all-NBA season. He's
right. He's a good player. Good players and a pretty good team, and they're over 500 and all of that stuff. But they needed to win this. Lakers needed to win this game because what's coming in front of them for a team that has not been very good on the road is pretty brutal. And, they get Chicago on Wednesday, I believe, correct? And it only gets harder after that. And so the Lakers, this was one of those games where you needed to elevate against a good team. they have to win against Chicago, but like you needed to elevate against a good team, and they didn't. And I think that to me is one of the things that I'm finding disturbing about this group, is that, it happened over the weekend against San Antonio, where get off to a bad start was relatively understandable in that game. And you can't carry the momentum after you get to within 4 against a bad team. Monday night, you fall behind by 8, but they went ahead. Lakers took a lead in this game and couldn't carry that momentum, that solid execution, that really good play. And there's no clutch shot making, those like pivotal shot. They're not very good. They're not bad, but they're not very good right now either.
I was going to say the right now, I think, is what's really important, because for a lot of this season, the Lakers actually have been a very good fourth quarter team, in part because win or lose, they'd often started so slow in order to even get themselves back in a game. They had to play really well in the fourth quarter.
And your point about LeBron has been just phenomenal in fourth quarter this year. And if he's not phenomenal, that hurts them.
Right. So, I mean, it should be noted, like, the idea that they aren't a good fourth quarter team, that's not actually accurate if you look at the season as a whole. But like, insofar as not being able to sustain momentum or bad habits seeping in, or just things that get in the way of finishing off what you started. I think a good example of this was at the half when the Lakers rallied and managed to finish going into intermission up 1, despite it being kind of ugly, and the Lakers having had a habit all season of giving up a lot of offensive rebounds and then second chance points. Despite giving up 5 offensive rebounds in that first half, they only gave up 2 second chance points. And that was a really big deal for them getting away with some of the stuff that wasn't going well from them. They also turned over the Knicks they turned them over 8 times in that first half. The Knicks ended up getting 8 more second chance points in the second half. Isaiah Hartenstein was absolutely destroying them, getting second chance opportunities for the Knicks. And they started turning the ball over more themselves. Like, there was one point Stu Lance,
just for the record, had 7 offensive rebounds.
Yeah. There was a point where Stu Lance, I want to say in the third quarter, noted that the Lakers, I think, only had 10 turnovers at that point, but it felt like a lot more. And I'm not joking, right as Stu said this, or maybe they had about 8 or 7, something like that, I was just about to text you, doesn't it feel like they have more turnovers? Yeah. Because even when the Lakers weren't giving up the ball, they often just seemed sloppy and unsure of themselves and just really herky-jerky in whatever they were doing. And that gets accentuated by LeBron's inability to finish a lot during this game. Taurean Prince missing 10 of the 13 threes that he attempted.
13 shots, all from 3. And if he's going to if Taurean Prince is going to take 13 shots, I want them all to be 3-pointers. That's the experience, but 7 of them need to go in.
Well, I mean, for perspective of just how many threes that is for Taurean, even as somebody who is a professional 3-point shooter, that's the second highest amount he's taken in a game in his career, and the highest since 2020. Like, if that felt like a lot, it's because it's a lot.
It was a lot. It was more Taurean Prince. Like I said, I don't need 22 shots from Prince and Cam Reddish.
Well, you had raised the point heading into the break about shot imbalance and where some of this could rectify itself. I've said this before. I'll say it again. And James Worthy, Hall of Famer, 1988 Finals MVP, said the same thing. I'd like to see Rui play more.
Yep.
Especially against a team like the Knicks that's pretty big. Like, the Knicks are one of the few teams that doesn't have to play overtly big in order to match the Lakers being kind of a natural. The Lakers can be a naturally big team. The Knicks don't have to go out of their way to be big. I'd like to see more Rui. I just would.
Yeah, or at the very least, I get a better feel for why the minutes are what they are. And look, I do wonder if there is a point at which, like Vanderbilt, Reddish is still, very disruptive on the defensive side, and he's still doing
He had a tough time in this matchup. He had a really difficult time.
But generally speaking, I think what he's sort of doing what he's being asked to do.
Sure.
But offensively, I think has certainly kind of turned back into a pumpkin. And it's hard to carry him and Vanderbilt and Hayes is sort of an offensive negative. And, you get, Taurean Prince has actually shot the ball pretty well. I wouldn't call him an offensive negative, but he's
not an offensive negative at all.
He's a very specific offensive player. So you're going to get certain kinds of things from Prince, but not necessarily, a dynamic driver. He's not going to, he's a finisher off the bounce, or he's a designated 3-point shooter. It's something they need on the floor, and it's very important for them. And broadly, I think Prince has continued to play pretty well, but it is. We did the whole show on this, last week. I would like to, at the very least, understand better what are the things, like who would have to sit, what would change.
Okay,
for Rui to play more.
Okay, let's get into that because we have to break anyway. So let's get into that coming up next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. And when I was about 12 years old, the Police, my all-time favorite band, still my all-time favorite band, they were on the Synchronicity Tour. It was probably the hottest ticket in the world at the time, and I could not get seats when I initially tried. But I thought, no big deal. I'll just catch the next Police tour. Well, they broke up after that tour because they couldn't stand each other.
Things scanned the crowd looking for you. He said, Andy didn't care enough. We're breaking up.
Yep, and I learned after that day, when it comes to a concert I want to see, carpe diem, don't miss out. And that's why I love Game Time, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy shows, and theater near you. And with killer deals on last-minute tickets, the best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets, start getting hyped for the fun. And the Game Time guarantee means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So snag the tickets without the stress using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest priced, guaranteed.
My theory, Andy, is basically, Rui, there are some defensive issues in terms of matchups. If LeBron is playing the minutes he's playing and AD is playing, and then when the three of them are on the floor together is when Rui tends to be least effective. I think, statistically that's been pretty consistent. But that said, particularly in a moment where Russell isn't giving you 18 to 20, he's giving you, 9 to 14, a night. Still averaging 16 on the season, but it's sort of sinking a little bit.
He's had a rough December. D'Lo has had a difficult December.
Since he went, 30, he dropped 35 on Detroit and then came back, 16 in Oklahoma City. He's gone 9, 8, 14, 7, 12.
Sorry, when your high point is Detroit, it doesn't count.
Right. And just you are correct. His December has not been nearly as good as his November. Hachimura is one of the more talented individual offensive players that they can access here. So who would sit, do you think, to get Rui 27 or 28 minutes a night? Like, how can you do that, given especially some of the matchup problems that can happen when AD, LeBron, and Rui play at the same time? Or would you just try to work your way through it?
I would be willing to work my way through it, at least to some degree, because last year we saw it often pretty effective in the playoffs. I mean, some I don't remember who it was, but someone hit us up on Twitter at Cam Brothers and asked if we had any idea why Darvin hasn't gone much, if at all, to the lineup of D'Lo, Reeves, Vando, LeBron, AD, or D'Lo, Reeves, Rui, LeBron, AD, or some combination involving Reeves, LeBron, AD, Rui. And he put in the caveat beyond the idea of injuries having made it difficult to try consistently. And unless the answer is injuries, I would like to see Darvin try a little bit more of what often worked last year. Because if you're asking me what one of the biggest differences between last year and this year when it comes to Reeves and D'Lo being more ineffective this year as opposed to last year when they played very well off each other, I think part of it is Reeves is just, well, I was going to say part of it is I think Reeves has been scouted more and teams just know him better. And that's going to make it, if nothing else, harder for Reeves to be as successful. He's going to have to up his own level, which he has been doing as the season's gone along, but that's a factor. The other thing is Vando. Yeah. Vando made it easier, I think, to play the two of them. But as far as finding more minutes for Rui, if you're only going to play Jackson Hayes 10 minutes tops a game, sometimes 7 or 8, I would just give those minutes to Rui.
I could live with knocking that down. I mean, the answer, I think, to why Vanderbilt isn't playing more beyond injuries is Cam Reddish. Because you can't play them together. You cannot play those two guys together, not for any kind of extended minutes, because they are too negative offensively. Like, it is really hard to play with
Rui and Reddish are too negative
Vanderbilt.
Okay, got it.
And so that's why I think the reason that Vanderbilt isn't playing as much is in part because Reddish is. There's a pitch count for Vanderbilt. He's not completely healthy. He hurt himself again, as you noted on Monday. But that, I think, is the biggest, I think, reason that Reddish is playing, and this also affects Rui's playing time, is Reddish and the amount of time that 23 to 29 minutes a game that Reddish is playing. And like, I get the it's kind of the imperative to play him because he has been a very versatile and very important defender. But, and I don't think he's even doing anything wrong other than, kind of come back down to earth a little bit with the shooting and stuff like that. But I don't know if he's the best guy to soak up 20. Can you do 28, 33 minutes or 34 minutes of Taurean Prince and 27 or 28 minutes of Cam Reddish? I don't know if offensively you can, even with Prince contributing like he has. So I wonder if part of this is dialing back Cam Reddish, even though, again, he's not doing anything wrong.
Well, it's
that
about
could be part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about trying to fill, or sort of fill in as many pieces of the puzzle as possible. And I want to make it clear, I've been lobbying a lot for more playing time for Rui. Rui playing an extra 10 minutes a game is not going to solve everything that's going on now. I want to make that clear. It's just one of those things that I don't quite understand. And I don't see anything particularly going wrong with him on the floor, even when I acknowledge, there are certain matchups that don't work naturally for him, but I don't see things necessarily falling apart because of that.
But they're not, for what, two guys who aren't NBA, veterans like we played in the league, but have been covering the team for getting close to 20 years, watched a lot of games. Compared to like a lot of these, we've seen some god-awful Laker teams. We've seen some phenomenal Lakers teams. This group doesn't feel way off to me. They are like going to the
way off in which direction?
They're not bad. Way off in the bad way.
Okay.
They are, to me, at this point at 15 and 12, like going to the eye doctor for your annual checkup, and you're sitting and you got the thing up to your eyes and they're like, number 1 or number 2, number 2, or number 3. And like, they're not like, you can see with all of them, 3 is a little crisp, a little better. It's like, they're just not in totally as a
and after
group.
a while, you just get bored and you just start
can't
saying
tell
numbers because you want to be done
between any of them.
You want to just be done with the damn visit.
Right. And like, they're like your glasses prescription that is just, you're taking them off and you're cleaning them a little bit. You can see, you can drive, you can do it, but something's just not right with it. They can't get the little lenses to line up in a way that you're actually at 20/20 vision. I'm not sure, that might have been a bit of a tortured metaphor.
No, actually, I think
it's a pretty good one.
I actually like that.
And I feel like 5-minute adjustments. Thank you. 5-minute adjustments, extra Rui, a little more of, the right pairing, a couple little shifts that I think could make a really big difference in what they're doing. And then certain guys just got to play, they need LeBron to be a 50% guy, 52, 53, not 46, 47. They need D'Angelo Russell to play like November D'Angelo and not December D'Angelo. And I say this is somebody who's sticking up still for Russell broadly. Like, they need those things to happen, but it's just little adjustments that I think, the difference between lens number 1 and lens number 2, that could get everything in line in enough time for them to make a kind of run to the top of the conference.
Yeah, we haven't really gotten a chance to talk with Darvin about this because they've been on the road so much and they haven't practiced frequently because their days off have been so few and far between. And then it's like, can either of us happen to be able to make that one practice, like once every 3 weeks that happens to go down? But I would love to ask Darvin if and I don't know if he'd answer completely transparently, but I would love to ask him if he has a full feel for what he wants in the rotation. Because I get a sense that it is still unsettled for him.
Yes.
And whether you think that is because of the external factors that have forced a lack of consistency or Darvin not pushing the right buttons, somewhere in between, I get a sense that he is not quite settled on what he wants. And maybe some of that has to do with Gabe Vincent, like a looming return. There have been some hope that he would be available tonight. He clearly wasn't, but it sounds like they think he's going to be back soon, if for no other reason than they're talking about it publicly. And like a month ago, they barely acknowledged who he was. But,
and he'll help, go live bodies. I don't know if he'll help all of the stuff that I'm currently concerned about, but it'll help.
But also too, it might help Darvin just settle into the things that he's really picturing. It feels like, okay, this one other guy is coming back, and then I can really commit to something.
And I think there is something that I don't think we'll carry this over for tomorrow. We'll get ready for the Chicago game as well. I don't think when they were figuring it out that this is what they thought it was going to be in terms of I don't think they factored in 25 minutes a night for Reddish. I think they did factor in 18 to 20, 15 to 20 for Wood. I think it looks different. And then when you have this sort of found money effect with Cam Reddish, like, you want to keep playing him. You want to kind of, reward that. I don't know. It would be easier if it were 2 or 3 things you could point at and say, what on God's green are they doing? Like, this is so obviously a terrible thing, but they don't have that, which is good. Like, I guess because it's, it's not panic time, but like, they could be a 500 team in a couple weeks, just based purely on the schedule. And that, 40 games in puts you in a tough spot. So we'll talk about this more on tomorrow's show. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with 22,000 subscribers, all of whom are kind of like us, wondering why it's not quite lining up the way you'd like it to. But a big game on against the Bulls on Wednesday, a must-win game against the Bulls coming up on Wednesday. We get you ready for that. See everyone tomorrow.